Slay the Princess, an upcoming visual novel by Black Tabby Games, offers players a beautifully dark world that turns the most deeply rooted conventions of writing on their head. And it does so under the guise of the simplest of premises: slay the princess. That's your solemn, solitary mission. There's no 80s training montage leading up to this climactic moment to get you in fighting fit shape to accomplish this dubiously simple task. No, sir. As soon as you press play, you're plopped in the forest, already on the path toward the cabin in which our not-so-fair damsel, in a surprisingly inordinate amount of distress, has found herself imprisoned, waiting practically on a silver platter for you to kill her. Hell, there's even a knife on the table just waiting for you to drive the point home. But that's too easy, right? That can't be all we're dealing with here. And why is the narrator so adamant about the fact that she needs to die? Well, supposedly you're not slaying the princess will bring about the absolute end of the world, which is pretty heavy shit, I suppose. And just how are her remaining alive and the end of the world even remotely linked? Never mind. How could we possibly argue with our wink, omniscient narrator when he declares, quote, "I've already told you what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a princess. How many times do I have to explain this incredibly straightforward premise?" End quote. To complicate the apparent simplicity of the premise, our narrator does also admit that, quote, "there's always a choice," end quote. We ultimately get to decide whether or not we actually go through with this gruesome task. And this is supported by the fact that we have oodles of choices to make in terms of how we proceed. Or is it? The folks at Black Tabby do some really interesting things with some deep-seated conventions of storytelling. For starters, we have an apparently omniscient, impartial narrator who says some things that belie this assumption. Trying to disobey the exhortation to slay the princess can result in the following line of dialogue from our narrator. Quote, "As much as I'd prefer for things to have gone differently, I can't deny the reality of what's happened." End quote. This clever line gives the narrator the appearance of total impartiality. It is you, the player, who messes up or makes a wrong choice. The narrator is apparently bound to whatever dumb decisions you make. However, you will quickly realize that the narrator has a vested interest in your successfully slaying the princess, and he even goes so far as to exert total control over the course of events despite whatever choices you make. But the really interesting part is the fact that the narrator exhibits genuine surprise at your efforts to thwart his exercising absolute control over the course of events. At one point, when things go especially off the rails, he even says, quote, "This isn't what I expected her to sound like," end quote. And here's where things get interesting. In a roundabout way, your choices actually do matter. At first glance, with the narrator being the little shit he is, you might be apt to disagree, and you couldn't be blamed for doing so. I mean, it seems that no matter what choices you make, all paths lead toward that confounding cabin with the princess inside. But things are not as they seem, and to avoid potential spoilers, suffice it to say that Deja Vu is a bitch, and you will feel its bark as well as its bite on subsequent playthroughs. And the choices you made from one fever dream to the next appear to carry over and influence subsequent playthroughs. What a fucking ingenious way to make choices actually matter. Bra fucking vo. Aside from the narrator and the princess, the other characters of note are the various voices, such as the voice of the hero you first meet. Is this the voice of your internal monologue as you think about the implications of the narrator's words? That assumption will quickly become complicated by the appearance of additional voices as you muddle your way through, but I'll leave it at that to once again avoid potential spoilers. Suffice it to say though, I can't wait to see what happens next with this one.